are going to get started on finding time for language. I have 6 tips for how to squeeze language into your busy ELA block. And my first tip out of 6 is to designate one of your groups to language or to grammar. So maybe if you're doing daily 5, replace one of those stations within daily 5 with a language activity. Or if you do literacy workstations, make sure there is one specific time that the students are explicitly learning and practicing a standards-based language skill or a reading foundation skill. So this might be a little difficult if you guys follow like a reader's workshop structure. If that's the case, you may have to like do language or reading foundation skills after your reader's workshop, but you just need to look at where your structure is and which ELA structure you choose and try to work grammar and language into that rotation. I talked about options for your ELA block structures, which was like, hey, you can use reader's workshop or daily 5. And I talked about how you can blend structures together to kind of make a hybrid that works for yourself. So that's one thing I did. I made skill drill one of my centers in daily 5. And during skill drill, that was the time where the students were working hands-on with a partner game or a language hands-on sorting activity. It could be like a little flip book or something. That was the time that they specifically had to work on language, and it was every day. So I was able to really work that in. Here is an example of one of the things that this is a kindergarten center, and it is a standards-based activity. So while the students are rotating around the room for daily 5, this might be one of the activities. It's a vocabulary activity for kindergarten where they have to sort multiple meaning words. So they have to find a word like chest and then find 2 pictures to represent that. And then they'll work with a partner, or they'll work in their small group, and they'll sort all of the activity or sort all of the picture cards out and match them to the word cards. And then they can either record their answers on a recording sheet or maybe use an iPad to take a picture to serve as their final like assessment piece for that activity, if that's something you require in their centers. But that's just one example of a way that you can just have it within their centers where they move around the room during daily 5 or reader's workshop or centers or stations, and that would just be there waiting for them. The second way that I suggest fitting language skills into your day is to start your morning with standards aligned spiral review. And these aren't necessarily going to be standards like based products. Like you're not going to be giving students ELA graphic organizers or ELA passages in the morning when they're coming in. But if you find something that does focus on the Common Core standards or whichever your state standards follow, or whichever state standards your state follows, if you find a worksheet or a set of morning worksheets that kind of follow a spiraling review of the standards you need, that will be very beneficial for your students, because that's going to be an opportunity for them to get those practice skills on language, which is something sometimes you don't have time to do in your ELA block. So my suggestion would be to fit it into morning work or to homework or into homework. And then if you have early finishers, maybe have a folder for them. The only thing with early finishers is that sometimes students will not have the opportunity to have those activities. So I would try to work it in where every student has the opportunity to do some sort of a spiral review. And I have morning work for K through 3, and I'm going to drop a link to that. If you are interested in that, the link is at the bottom of that image, or I just dropped it in the comments. So the morning work that I have, it mixes math, reading, and language skills. So it's not just language specific. It kind of cycles through everything. But it's just an example of one way that you can work these skills into an every single day activity without having to take big chunks of your reading and writing time to take and distract away from that. So we have our third tip, and that is to work it into a technology center 2 to 3 times a week. So if you already have a technology center worked into your like workstations or centers, one opportunity would be to always have maybe 2 or 3 times a week to have one of those activities being a language-based game. So a couple activities I would or a couple websites I would suggest is IXL, Spelling City, Starfall, iRead, and then education.com. And I think all of those have a free component. But I think all of them you have to sign up for like some are paid, but some you can get free stuff. But I do think you do have to make like a teacher account to use the free resources, and then they'll probably require you to upgrade to get more. But I do think that I know IXL and Starfall at least have a handful of language games that practice, and IXL is really important because it is specifically standards based. So you can find standards that you're teaching that week and have the students work on a game. And actually, I have an IXL picture here. So this would be working on our controlled vowels, which is not necessarily a language activity or a language skill. That's more like RF realm where they're working with letters and letter sounds and blends. But that just shows IXL has a handful of games that you can pick from, and they are free that you can use. If you have any other language-based apps or websites that you know about that are free, can you please put those in the comments for everybody to read? And so I think it's really important to share ideas if you have any. So Teach Your Monster to Read is great for K and Yummy Yummy. So I don't know about those. I'm wondering if these are online activities to use. And so if you know of any more, please add those into the comments for other people to grab ideas. Number 4, we are going to talk about focusing on just doing too many lessons a week. So I know fitting language in is pretty difficult for teachers that are already kind of busy and that don't have long ELA blocks. So one suggestion I have is to do maybe like a Monday, Wednesday mini lesson, and then like have a partner activity or independent activity for follow-up. And then each day during centers or hands-on time, the kids can practice. But if you are short on time, I would definitely suggest bumping down and only doing mini lessons like twice a week. And then if you guys find yourself virtually teaching or distance learning, that's probably going to bump even farther down to 1 lesson per week. But I would suggest if you find yourself in a virtual learning scenario, always try to have at least one of your mini lessons being about grammar or language a week, because it is still important to get those lessons in. I know your lessons are going to be limited because some districts kind of pick and choose what you can teach, how you can teach it. So I would suggest doing at least, during distance learning, at least 1 language unit a week. And then when you're in class to do 2. Another suggestion I have, and this is going to be another one that is kind of different with distance learning and social distancing, are busy bags. So in a normal situation, your busy bags are going to be like for early finishers or for downtime. It's going to be things that are kind of things that you can print out and have ready for students to go, just maybe in a bucket or hanging on a ring at the door, maybe even at each of the kids' desks or tables, things that they can just grab and play if they find themselves needing to get any downtime completed, or if they finished quickly. So another example of how you could do busy bags is to do a whole class busy bag and have like flashcards or something during morning work or at lineup time. And those flashcards can be things like task cards for language skills. So you would say like, make a busy ring for nouns, and you'd have kids answer questions about nouns and verbs and adjectives. So these are just ideas to have things ready to go for your early finishers or for those easy transitions. And just any time that you know you're going to have a little bit of time between a transition or a class switch or going to lunch, maybe they're washing their hands or getting a drink, use that time to really fit those language skills in so that you're not taking big chunks of time out of your teaching, but you're still making sure to get them taught as often as you can and kind of reviewed as often as you can. I know language skills, it's very important to have those repeating skills practice, because if they learn about adjectives in October and then they don't learn about adjectives until the following school year, it's probably going to require a reteach. But if you teach adjectives in October and then you reteach it in November and you reteach it in January, and they're practicing spiraling these skills and reminding themselves of these skills, it's going to stay fresh in their brain, and it's going to be a lot easier for when they bump up to the next grade. Okay, so we have to expand from adjectives to adverbs. So the next teacher's not going to have to teach and reteach as much adjective work because they're going to be pretty skilled in adjectives already. So when they come to adverbs, it's going to be a lot easier. And the sixth and final tip I have is to break your language and your RF standards down. So you're going to decompose your standards, because a lot of Common Core standards, and I know probably TEKS has the same issue in Virginia and all the states that have broken apart from Common Core, a lot of states and a lot of standards, these standards are very complex and there's a lot of pieces that go into it. So one example is, let's see, I have a first grade example, and this standard says use common, proper, and possessive nouns. So how I would decompose that standard is I would break it apart into 5 or 6 pieces. And students are going to have maybe a day or a mini lesson on reviewing nouns from kindergarten. And then the next day they'll have a day on common nouns. And then the next day they'll have a day learning just about proper nouns. And then maybe a day to mix the two and to differentiate between what's a common noun, what's a proper noun, how can I differentiate? And then you can move into possessive nouns the next day. So breaking down each of those standards makes it a lot easier for the students to grasp that content. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to do L11B Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this week, and I'm just going to give them a bunch of activities with all of those skills, it's very important to break them down and decompose those standards. Another example is L21F. So this is another language standard. It's all about sentences, and they have to produce, expand, and rearrange complete, simple, and compound sentences. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that. So first I would suggest, and I wrote complex, but I meant compound. Start simply by just doing simple versus compound sentences. What's a simple sentence? What's a compound sentence? Not complex. And then spending a day or two on just producing sentences, and then spend a day or two on expanding sentences, and then rearranging sentences, and then do a big mixed review. So instead of finding resources that match this standard and putting it into the like small groups or daily 5, I would suggest doing mini lessons and breaking those skills apart so that students can really understand. And if you break them into smaller chunks, they're going to take less time of your day, because if you're teaching what a simple or compound sentence is, that might only take you a 5 to 10 minute mini lesson instead of trying to teach this whole standard in one day. And that's going to take a 20 to 30 minute chunk to teach all these pieces of that standard. So I would suggest decomposing them and stretching them out over a 2-week period or a 1-week period, depending on how complex the standard is. So that would be my 6th and final tip for fitting language into your day. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Bye-bye.